What is going on, everybody? We are live. Give me a second while I get us on Instagram as well.
Hey, we have Eric here, Keto50.
Yo.
What's up?
We got I guess, an overdue episode in a sense. But as always, we have Willy, firefighter, actor, therapist, you name it, he does it, leading the way. Then we've got Eric, who likes to get shot at and pass out lately. Anyway. And last, we've got retired undercover detective, myself, Matt Pitcher. And tonight, we are going to do what we should have done a long time ago and talk about Willy's story and my story so you understand why we started this thing. And Eric is going to be the solo host tonight. And he's going to be really kind to me because I'm a police officer. And then he's going to pick on the firefighter. So.
He's crossing over. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.
So here's the official flip coin. All right, we're going to see
you flip a coin
tonight, all right?
Uh-oh, here we go.
I guess we'll go with the camper. We'll go with the copper. Yeah, here we go. All right, we're going to start with Willy.
All right, let's do it.
So some of the things we're going to talk about were trauma and all kinds of things that we've all gone through, right? So I know that you, being a fireman, have similar trauma and also very different traumas and stuff like that. So for us to understand you, why don't you just tell us about yourself and kind of your story and how we got to the couch?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for that, by the way. I think I'll just start off by saying that it wasn't until I was in my midlife where I actually realized that I was doing everything wrong in a way. And I realized that I was doing all the right things and trying to learn everything, trying to practice all this stuff. And I realized now things are different. So let me reverse. Now I focus on myself and like who I am, my connection with God, like my family. I really try to be genuine. And so I try to take it moment by moment. So that's now. But if we go in reverse, it was filled with a lot of anxiety from day one as growing up, and depression too. I've always had depression. And I've even done an episode on here, and I cried. So it's whatever. We already did that.
I'm a crier. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Ludington, Michigan. It's a little beach town. So from Michigan, we could do this. You know, it was up here on Lake Michigan. It was kind of a place where people from Chicago with lots of money would bring their boats, basically. And it's a cool town. I got a twin brother. That's where me and him, I was born with a buddy.
Wait, hold on. There's two of you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his name is Waylon. We were Waylon and Willy growing up. So, country folks.
Cool, man.
And, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I think growing up in a little town like that, we moved a lot. Once we started moving, we moved like every 2 years, and then it was just basically I lived on the couch. I mean, that's kind of how things went. My teenage years, it was a hot mess. I got my girlfriend pregnant when I was in high school.
Wow.
And I had to like quick hurry up and get a job and like get my shit together. And, you know, that was the first kind of major knock on my door, the internal one, where I realized actually, like, I don't know what I'm doing in life. As a teenager, you know, having a baby, I didn't have parents around that. I'm sure they cared at their level, but also not enough to be really involved in my life. And nor would I probably wanted it at the time, you know? Being honest, I didn't care. I was mad at everybody. My parents went through a divorce when I was 12. My brother and I, we were in 7th grade. So it didn't, that event probably sent me down a direction that ended up being okay. But I ended up getting in a lot of trouble with the law as a teenager. So you guys, I used to run from cops.
Which one did it?
Did we catch you? Did we normally catch you? That's important.
Sometimes, you know, like sometimes. But that's why I laugh when I talk with cops now. I'm like, man, you like would have chased me when I was a teenager, you know? And because I needed that though. I needed discipline. I needed like somebody to tell me what to do. I didn't have no idea how to navigate through life. I was just getting by. And I didn't go to high school. I really didn't even finish middle school. I didn't go. I just never showed up.
What year?
This is when I was a kid.
No, what
Kinda,
years? Like the calendar year.
Years. Oh, geez. I should have graduated in 1998.
So you're going in the 90s. You're not even going finishing middle school. That's wild. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So then, after I got myself into a major life dilemma, let's put it this way, where I had to really look at myself and be like, hey, what are you doing? And I felt like, to be honest, that was a God moment, because I was not reaching out or doing anything, trying to change my life. I didn't know what to do. So I just drank and smoked weed and, obviously had sex and, like what do other teenagers do when you don't have parents? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I was doing, So, yep. That developed in me an anxiety component. And then there's depression in the middle of that too, because I had already tried to commit suicide once and I never tried again. But I tried once. We already talked about that on a different episode. It's one of the first ones. And, so I've always lived with depression, meaning where I wake up and I just feel depressed. I don't know why. Just, and I'm working through that now. Like I'm figuring stuff out. But back as a teenager, it wasn't like that. And so then I did the trades. I did all the jobs you can do without a high school diploma at the time. I did carpentry, did heating and air, did plumbing, did electrical, whatever you got to do to make money. And now you make bank if we did that.
Exactly.
Back then, it was not a cool job, though, man. Like, you didn't get paid anything, really, to be in trades. It was hard work and low pay. And and I realized, like, I got to get out of that mindset. And when I was like 24, that's when I got, so because I had been in trouble with the law, I counted myself out to begin with, ever being a firefighter or something like that. And I got to back up just a little bit, because I was 21 when the towers were struck in 9/11. And so that's actually what inspired me, though. Watching the firefighters run up the towers and hearing all that, all those people jumping and like, I had no idea about firefighting at the time. The only thing I knew about firefighting at that point was it's really hard to become one.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I knew about it. But I committed to doing something. And then by the time I was 24, that's when I came to this place where I was like, hey, I'm going to go for it and try to get a job as a firefighter. And so I went, and I said a prayer, just asking God, show me where to go, like what to do. I don't know. Still no parents, really. I mean, that's been my whole life. Like I've been independent my whole life. I could survive with nobody. And that's not a compliment. That's like it's just the way it is. So I struggle with connecting and making, like keeping people, in my world, because the only people I know always leave. And so I got used to not connecting to anybody because they would leave, and then the fire department came around, that idea of being like in a crew and living with dudes that we're on this mission to help people every day, and women too. I don't mean that in a negative way. And so then I applied to the fire academy at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. It's like a pre-service. So you go.
Is that a real name? Is that a real name? Come on.
Yeah, I graduated from there, man. It's a real place. Kalamazoo's a real place, But even now, I'm feeling super anxious even bringing this stuff up, because it brings me back to these spots, like where I was stuck and thought there was no plan, but there really was a plan. I just wasn't aware of it, and all I knew is I needed to apply. That was all. So I got really good at telling people, I mean, maybe someday I'll share more about this, but I got really good at telling people what I think they needed to hear from me so that they would give me a chance. And I would always emphasize that, like, what I've learned as a result of all this crap that I've been through, and including the poor choices that I've made. You know, I've owned those. I've never ran from responsibility. I would plead guilty. I know you're not supposed to do that, you know, like just I'm guilty, you know, like trying to get off of it. But when I was guilty, I just pled guilty, and that was it. There was no like me trying to, you know, work an angle or something. It was just like, all right, yeah, I did that, and you know, now I got to fix it, you know, like so the guy at the fire academy, his name was Wayne, and he was a retired fire chief from Portage, Michigan, which was nearby. And he, after hearing this whole spiel, and after hearing me talk about like why I want to be a firefighter and all this stuff, and he stands up and he's like, you know, I stood up, and he puts his hand out and he's like, "Welcome to the fire academy. I'll stick my neck out for you." And I was like, I will not let you down. And I'll be the first person there. I'll be the last person to leave. And that's exactly what happened. I got into this fire academy. It was hosted by a local department, and then just people from everywhere are coming. But, and after about 6 months of being there, the graduation came, and I was picked by the other people in the class to do a speech, and I became the class rep. And so then all of a sudden my world like opened, because before that it was like, I'm just going to do trades. I'm just going to get by. I don't know what I'm going to do, you know? And now all of a sudden now I had like the option of a family, you know, and a focus, and a mission, and something that I personally wanted to, like, I felt like I was doing something to help the world. And plus then in some level I was making up for all the crap that I did bad.
I think, I mean, males out there or people in general need that kind of, you know, you have a purpose now, right?
Yeah.
And you were lost. Divorce tears up kids, and I got 8 marriages with my 2 parents, so I know how you feel, man.
Oh yeah.
New parents all the time, new adjustment, new environment, proving yourself, having a chipper on your shoulder, and so I get it, man. You came a long way to get there, and you held on to that.
Yeah. So this is all leading up to why I'm doing this podcast, really, and why we're even here. Because that first year was like the best year of my life, and I was rookie of the year. I realized I had some leadership characteristics which I never knew I had. And then there was a way to apply it, and then there was like steps that I could learn to keep growing, and became a driver operator, or started to practice anyway. Which it's interesting to become a driver at that department at the time. You had to be able to drive every apparatus and know it inside and out, including blindfolded.
Yep.
So you had to put blindfolds on, and somebody walk you around and be like, touch the air brake. You had to touch it. You couldn't be like, you know, it's over there. And I'd like, you know, and they had to do it in the dark, and like it just made it really complicated, because it's like you're asleep, you can't think, and there's a house on fire, and you got to be able to do all the stuff, you know. So it was challenging to me, and that's what got me into it. But that first year was great. Had shifts and stuff, and I was on call a bit, quite a bit actually. I volunteered myself for every little thing that I could do. And so, long story just to say, about a year and a half in, there was it was like a Sunday night in February, and someday I'll have this guy on here, but this means a lot to me. So the fire chief had a house fire at his house, and we were due to respond first in. So I have to tell you, though, the fire chief at the department also stuck his neck out for me. This guy, actually, his name is Ken Howe. He's retired now. He works for the state. He might even be retired from that. I don't know. He used to inspect like schools and stuff once he retired. But moral of the story, he's still alive. Okay, so this guy actually he heard, my background and stuff. I don't have a clean background. It's not crazy, but it's not the greatest, So when I applied to be hired, he was like, "You're a shoo-in, man. I'll hire you, no problem." And then I had to give him the spiel about this is where I come from, this is what I've learned, and who I am and stuff. And so he gave me a chance. He gave me a real chance. He gave me a job. And I had an interview board and all that stuff you go through, interviews and physical agility and all that stuff. But he gave me the job. So he actually became kind of like a father figure to me because he was somebody to look up to.
Yeah.
And he was, I remember asking him in that first year, I was like, what do I do in this career? Like, because there's so many paths you can take, And he's like, well, I said, what's the most dangerous? And he was like, hazmat. And I was like, well, I'll be your hazmat guy. And yeah, that was, that was not the most fun, but that's what I wanted. I just was like, just give me the hardest job because this is my life. This is how I live every day. I feel like I just do the hardest thing all the time. So let's just do it. And so I've dedicated to becoming a hazmat guy. And years later, I was a regional hazmat team leader. We had a regional team and we worked with civil support teams through the National Guard and a bunch of cities and stuff all combined together. So that did take shape. But it started with that chief. And let me come back to the house fire then, because it was at his house. And we showed up and there was thick black smoke rolling, like pushing out of the windows, which is a bad sign. If it's like pushing as pressurized, it's not just wafting out, it's like blowing out black smoke. And it was a tri-level house. And so we got there and my job was to do a vent enter search and throw a ladder to the roof, get up in the roof, break the window out, go across the room, shut the door, search the room, come back out. Meanwhile, the house is on fire. So it's like a high adrenaline. You do that when you have to kind of thing. So that's what I was gearing up to do, threw a ladder to the roof. And then I turned around and then someone had already rescued the chief. And nobody else was in the house. It was just him. He got his family out. We found that later. But they heard him cough once. Just a little.
And that's how they found him?
And it was an unconscious cough. Because he could hear everything. He could not see, he could not move. And that's what carbon monoxide will do to your body. That's what that smoke will do. It'll render you unconscious. But you're still there. You just can't move. And so he coughed because he had breathed in a bunch of smoke, and the guys found him, threw him outside, and they threw him to me. And so mind you, I'm only like a year in. I'm a new guy, and now it's the chief. And so I'm like looking at him. I'm at his house, and I was like, I got to do this perfect, like I have to help this guy in every way, and then there was nothing really that I could do. And that was like a hard thing to sit with, because he was conscious, he was breathing, but he was unconscious. I'm sorry, but he's breathing.
Yeah.
And so then what else am I supposed to do? Like, I'm not a paramedic. I don't have an ambulance. Like, check his airway, breathing, circulation. Like, that's pretty much where I was at,
Right.
But it's that helplessness that I experienced in that moment that struck so deep. For a firefighter to feel helpless.
Yeah.
Or a cop to feel helpless. That's hard, man. That like leaves a mark. So anyway, that guy, we got him to the hospital. He was airlifted to a decompression chamber in another city, in another hospital. We had honor guard and all that stuff, and I went and visited him. But after that is when I started to be very hyper vigilant about everything. Like, I sleep with a fire extinguisher under my bed because I'm like, well, if I have to crawl, because you're supposed to, like, if you hear the smoke alarm, you're supposed to get on the floor. And I mean, I was like living in another planet all of a sudden. So that's how I started.
Wow.
That's so interesting to hear you say that about the fire extinguisher, just because we've talked about you and I have talked about some of the weird stuff I've done after that. And it's pretty much, it's like the exact same thing, but just in a different scenario. So
yeah, we put guns in our toilet or behind the toilet. Just from the shower,
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Real quick, hi Abby. Sorry, I keep going now.
Abby. Yeah. I know. I'm not even looking at comments or anything.
So-
man.
I've
Sorry.
tried to glance. I've missed
Yeah.
most of them. Jared, I think, is on here. What's up, Jared?
What
Willy,
up, fellas?
Mr. S.
You did bring up that helpless feeling. Like, did you then use that to get better trained at things, so you're prepared yourself, so you're never caught in situations like that?
Yeah, I think I didn't know enough at that time, and we didn't have any mental health things at all. Like that was so foreign to anything. We didn't. I mean, we had. I shouldn't say that. Let's put it back. Let me pull that back. We had debriefings. So on that house fire, though, I was still on duty when we came back. So we put the house fire out, and we came back, and and I had things we had to do. I never got to go to the debriefing, and there was another one, and I couldn't make that one, and that was it. That was what, like, and then it was like, don't bring this up because it's a traumatic thing and it's happening in the agency, and like just kind of continue on, the usual. So it's just suck it up, just deal with it. And it's hard to do that. I want to say it was a number of years because there was some wins in there too, and wins versus losses is a bad thing to think about, like
Right.
fail or not fail, because there's usually something in between that's a little more like realistic. But I had a win where my first house fire, I was on podcast with the Disruptors and talked about this with Brian.
Hey, great guy.
Yeah, so we talked about this.
He'll be on here at some point.
We'll bring him
Make
in
sure
here.
that- oh yeah, he'll
Yep.
definitely come on.
Yeah. Well, and I had my first apartment fire on my own. I had another firefighter with me. My first time driving, engineer. And the first time pulling up, and there's people jumping out of windows, and there's fire blowing through the third story of an apartment. And we rescued a family out off the third floor balcony. And they did award us for that. We've talked about that, me and Matt, a little bit. So there's some good stuff in there, but that also, it started to create this momentum where I was like, there's like really high highs and then like whoa lows, because we're losing people. There's babies in the dumpster. There's like, all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. We just do whatever you do and then continue on, and I was still reeling from the Chiefs fire. So I'm a couple years in, and then we had this, I call it like this string of black cloud. That's what they call you if you are always on duty, this shit that follows you.
I thought it was shit magnet. That's what that was mine.
Yeah,
I was
same
called shit
thing.
magnet. Yeah.
Yep, same thing. Yeah, so there was a house fire that happened. This is also in April. I don't know why I remember these dates. Some stuff just sticks to me, but there was a house fire that came in at like 7 a.m. on like a Saturday, and it was warm. It was in Michigan. It was warm April morning, and we just got back from medical call. I was there with another firefighter, and we heard a report of a structure fire, 17 people trapped, and so we obviously hightailed it. But guess what? Who was first due? It wasn't even my agency. It was another town, but they didn't have a full-time fire department. They had paid on call, and so people had to like show up, and so we were the only like agency nearby with a engine first due, and so we pulled up, and I was the driver, so my job is to supply everybody with all of what they need. Long story short, that one was the most horrific one that I ever experienced, and there was a lot of people in that house. I was on a hose line by myself for a while there. Went through the front door, ripped the front door off, and in the moment, didn't. Investigators asked me later, like, "What happened?" Like, I don't even know. It just got in the way, and there was like nothing was gonna stop me. That's where I felt like I went 1,000%. Like there was nothing. I could have died in there, like, because I was like, I'm gonna save every one of these people, or I'm gonna try. And this house was on, like, it was blowing out fire when we showed up, just rolling out the front picture windows, the ranch style house. And as soon as I got in, I hit the fire. Most of it was right there where I went in. And my partner had gone through the back and went through a window and crawled past where I was hitting the fire to this bedroom. It was like a 3 or 4 bedroom ranch style house. And there's kids all piled up in the back corner in a bathroom. And so when I got to the back there was another firefighter on a window, and they were passing kids out the window. And I grabbed a lady. She was like 26. Her feet were all burned up. She was pregnant. I grabbed her. Was somebody else helped me? I don't know. I don't remember that part, like who it was and stuff. But I brought her outside and I laid her down, and I just had to look around because it was like surreal. It was everyone was doing CPR on kids, you know.
Wow.
And so I went back in and tried to do what I could, and there was nobody else in there. And we had rescued 5 kids and a pregnant female. And then I rode into the hospital with the pregnant female they didn't have to do, she was breathing, but she's unconscious. And she did pass at the hospital. And there was a bunch of racial stuff that happened. I think we were on that episode with Aaron. We talked about that one.
Yeah, we did talk about it. Yeah, because you broke my heart then. So
yeah, but you can feel how it like compounds. Like there's this happening, my own trauma from my own stuff I've always had, and then you add to like the chief, and then you add like these kids, and then after that it was like an infant homicide that we showed up, and the baby's not breathing, and the mom's over there just sitting there on the couch not caring at all, and she had hit the baby, and the baby died. And so like I was going on calls like that, and they started compounding like really fast. And it became serious, like really serious about training. When people were like complacent, that bothered the shit out of me. Because I'm like, you have no idea, man. Like this could happen in a split second. You could be inside of a house risking your life in a split second. You need to stop. You know, I got like on that kind of wave.
Yeah.
And before I used to be really funny, and I was like, I had a good time, and like we tried to, you know, just make the best of it, really.
Yeah.
And it became real.
Yeah. It started sinking in on me, and I was in training at the time. I helped with like the training council, so we do trainings and stuff. And I got really serious, and I just know that was like the first big red flag, like super serious about stuff. No more humor. And then I was drinking a lot to like relax. And
typical.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
You're talking about water, though, right? A lot of
water.
Hydrated.
Yeah, spirit water.
Just making spirit water.
Well, Willie, we could get to layers upon layers, but I know as a fireman, I mean, let me talk about being a fireman. When I was an officer, we show up at a fire. When we saw you heroes there, it was like, all right, go to work, boys. You know, but sometimes we do have to get there ourselves and help people out and make those decisions that we're not really well trained on 100%. You know, I mean, we know some stuff, but we're not really trained when to go in. Like you talked about the smoke coming out. I wouldn't know something's about going down, but I wouldn't have known that's why.
Yeah.
So to get to Matt, so now, do you have a fire story before you get into?
Hold on, I gotta say hi to John Collins first because he's on here. Our guest from the other day. What's up, John? He says he wish he'd known Willie back then. He's clearly out of his mind and lying. I don't know what's going on there. Probably a miss. Actually, he must have met me. Is what I think it's typing. Hey, before we get to me, there was one other section I wanted to get to with Willie because, so you get out of fire then. Mm-hmm. What drew you coming into this podcast? But prior to the podcast, you were a therapist and an actor. We can get into the actor another time. Mm-hmm. But what drew you into therapy? Because that's a pretty incredible thing because of all the trauma you went through, and now helping others with that same kind of issue.
Yeah. Well, I'll just speed it up because I know what you're saying. How did I become a therapist? And then what happened from there? I think there was nobody doing what I do now. So now I'm a therapist. I work with first responders. I didn't know anybody doing that. So I became that guy. I was like, all right, well, I'll do it because we need more of those people. And then that process took me then to seminary where I got a degree in Bible theology and counseling, which I wanted to be able to do faith-based counseling with people when they want it.
Right.
Because I work with everybody, and not everybody has a faith, but it just if they want it, I want to be able to include that. So I went there and I had to do sounds goofy, but like had to do a research project, had to write a thesis. I did an optional one because I go extra, so I did it on resilience training among firefighters, and I based it off of what the U.S. Department of Defense was doing at the time, and they had a program called the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Program. And it looked at all these areas of the life of a soldier, and they tried to prepare the soldier for. And I say try because this is government, so which really means is that they messed it all up, But they tried, And what I was trying to do is just base it off something. But what it did though was it lit the fire on resilience training, resilience theory, which is not medical model where something's broken and now we got to fix it. Resilience theory is more about you already have areas of your life where you are able to flex and bend and be adaptable and improvise. And then there's some parts you get stuck on. And you work to get unstuck, but you can work to become more strong. It's not a weakness kind of mentality. And I figure, well, if the soldiers are doing that, firefighters can too.
Absolutely.
So that's what everything that I've done since then has been following this thing called resilience, meaning, and then it became a buzzword, a few years later.
Of course.
But that's really what got me into being a therapist. That's what I work on today. That's why we're on this podcast.
Yeah.
100%.
That's awesome. That's why I wanted to get to that.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Well, we spent too much time talking about weeds, so
that's Willie, are you also going to talk about how you and I met on that commercial? No, we're not going to do that. All right, fine. We can skip that.
Hey, one of these days we're going to do that one.
When we're finally willing. Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm going to do a Cliff Notes version definitely for my career and everything, what got me where I am. If you want to hear the entire story, actually, I'm going to throw a bone out to Abby real quick. She's got a podcast on being a police officer where she and I sat down and I pulled a Willie and cried, I think. But went into way in depth about my career. So I would recommend you go check it out. It was one of my favorites. Actually, my brother says I've done a bunch of podcasts. He says that's his favorite that I've done. But anyway, so my whole life has been a weird mishap in some ways. You guys are all awesome. Thank you, brother. Love you, John. Like law enforcement was something I knew as a little kid that I kind of wanted to do. Now I knew like I wanted to do CIA originally. Like I wanted to do the undercover. I wanted to be a spy. Show James Bond how it's really done, all that kind of thing. Yeah. And I find out, number one, in case you didn't know, James Bond's not a real person, apparently. He's just a character. That's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the CIA spend a lot of time doing reports and very little time actually being a spy and all that. So that didn't sound as great. And my brother had become a cop in North Carolina, and I was hearing stories about some of the stuff he was getting into, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to become an undercover cop, and that was my goal from that point forward. And it's okay to say shit show. Yeah. You got that right. So I went to the academy, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Academy, Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a pretty big department. I think we're right around 2,000 officers at that time. I think not quite, but pretty close, somewhere right around there. But anyway, met some of the vice guys at that time, and like as media fascination, like you heard John and I talk about Mark Robeson. That was like, I looked at him as a celebrity. Like he was invited, like that's the guy I want to be. And then you always want what you don't know about, and I wanted to do deep cover. Like, and I wanted that before that. When I say deep cover, because it gets thrown out, and to be honest, like sometimes being petty, I get irritated when it gets thrown out because people do a 6-month investigation that's automatic deep cover, but yet they're going home every night and stuff like that. And that's not, in my opinion, what deep cover is. So eventually I got my turn to get into vice and narcotics. I did a bunch of street level narcotics in the district, did that kind of thing. While I was in the district, it was David 3, and it was considered basically the worst district in Charlotte, or the most active district, let's say it that way. And I had, at that time, I lost a couple friends. Two of my friends were executed by a coward who I will never say his name. Um, Literally shot in the head, like blindsided, shot in the head. Yeah, exactly, John. Um, and that was just a heartbreaking and one of the most emotional times of my life, going through that and dealing with that. And we lost other officers, but the way that one went down and being so close to home, and like literally the night before it happened, Sean and I, one of the officers that was executed, he was talking about, like, I was doing a lot of, like I said, street level buys and stuff like that. And he was kind of fascinated by it. So like, hey, would you teach me, help me out? I'd really like to ride with you guys and all that. And just like the nicest guy in the world, former military, nothing you can't like about this guy, right? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. And his wife was pregnant at the time, and I had a young kid as well when all this went down. And it spun me. But I also, it was one of those moments in your life where you start to think, is like, I had put off going to Vice and Narcotics. I was pretty happy doing the street level buys, that kind of thing. And I guess it was the reminder that, this job and this life could end at any minute. And that was always my goal, was to get after it this way. So at that point I said, all right, I'm going for it. So I got up to Vice and Narcotics, started doing the normal Vice and Narcotics thing, and kind of a convoluted story, but I blew out my knee. And when I came back, I'm sitting there trying to get things working again because I'd missed 5 months. And you kind of have to scrounge because most of your informants are going to move on. People you were dealing with are going to move on. So I ended up calling up a stripper I've been dealing with. And she agrees to sell me a ball of cocaine. And one thing led to another with her. And she introduced me to some other people, and they ended up being mob, and really tied in. And I, being a dumbass in a lot of ways, but I had told her, because I thought the case wasn't going anywhere at one point, and I told her I was a billionaire, and just played like just having a little fun, thinking, well, it doesn't matter anyway. Like, she was going to end up getting arrested, and that's going to be that. What does it matter? And she believed it completely. And so she introduces me to these people, and all of a sudden I've got to keep up this same thing as being a billionaire. And this one guy, I was called Marcos, and he's known as Marcos, friend of the Greeks. Well, he and I become best friends. I, and one other guy that was an Italian guy. And it goes to me spending literally 24/7 with him. Like, I slept at his condo pretty much every single night. So I get to know him very, very well. He and his family, he was divorced. He had two daughters who were at that time like 19 and 21, if I remember correctly, or real close to that. And they'd have trouble, and they called me up on the phone. Like, I basically became part of his family. And he did. He told me I was part of his family. So my job at that point, like, originally it was going to be, we were bringing 50 kilos in every other week from another country. And I was, quote unquote, going to be opening up a crappy club that we were going to store cocaine in to distribute throughout the United States. That was kind of the game plan. It was DEA was involved at that point. Marcus and I go to sit down one day he goes, we got to talk of how we're going to do things. And so we sit down in a place by his condo with a bottle of wine, and conversation goes down a different road really, really fast. He's like, all right, we're going to be paying this people off. You're going to pay the Greeks this much. And you're going to be sponsored by the Greeks, which is basically under the Greeks' protection, just another word for extortion in a sense. And that's how this was going to go down. And I get out of that, and at this point, the SBI was involved in this case. The ATF was involved. The DEA was involved. And I met with an ATF agent, who's a buddy of mine, and he goes, hey, come on, we gotta go meet somebody. And he takes me to the FBI office. And so from that point forward, no other agency was involved. I wasn't allowed to have contact with anybody. And it was extreme isolation from that point forward. I hung out with Marcos and Mikey. Those were my two friends in that. Mikey was the Italian guy. And that case was the most nerve-wracking, everything from knowing other police officers or law enforcement that are dirty. And this is in my backyard that I'm playing in. To give you an idea, Mikey and I are out one night, and Mikey would definitely have somebody killed in a heartbeat. That was his type of person. I helped Mikey move. I knew kind of firepower and everything else Mikey had. And Mike, like, I drove Mikey to different parties where we take a kilo of cocaine to the party. So it was that kind of relationship. And Mikey loved me. He would always, like, because one time he had a bunch of pills and coke that he was taking to a party, and he puts it, and I'm driving, and he puts it in the trunk of my car, and he goes, well, hold up a second. He takes his driver's license. He goes, we got to put my driver's license, talking about his driver's license, not mine. He says, I got to put it in my bag because if we got stopped and they ran a dog or anything like that, as long as my driver's license is in that bag, I'm the only one who goes to jail for it, so you don't. So he would literally, like, he was very, very protective of me in a major way. But we were at a party one time and another officer, this upscale party type thing. So it wasn't at a club, so it's not uncommon to see other officers. And I noticed when I came in, and I was like, man, he won't say anything. I'll be good. And then I hear my real name being called out. I'm like, well, that's not good. Oh. I'm like, but if I know him, clearly he'll take the hint and I'll be good. And then I keep hearing my name. And then I feel somebody grab my shoulder, and literally Mikey is right beside me. And that was the, oh crap moment for me. And he turned around and goes, Matt, right? Calls me by my real name, calls me by my last name. And goes, CMPD, which not a person in the world. When you say PD, there's not one person in this world that doesn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great place to die. Why not?
Here we go.
And of all people, Mikey looks at him and says, dude, he doesn't know who the fuck you are. Leave him alone. And I was like, oh, thank God. I can't believe this. And more funny, about a couple months later, I was with Mikey at a party, and there was somebody I went to high school with that was in Charlotte. I was in middle school when they were in high school, I believe, or close to that. And they had somewhat of a celebrity status a little bit. And a lot of the parties I were going to were attended by celebrities and such. And so I knew I was going to this one party. It was a very, very large party. I knew there was a chance she was going to be there. I was like, a bunch of people. Haven't seen her since I was in middle school. I'll be fine. Whenever I say I'll be fine, apparently that's when I need to learn that things are going to go really, really bad for me. But we go to the party, and sure enough, she's there. I hear my name being called again when I'm in the kitchen, which is a ton of people. So I just make my way out of the kitchen. I'm like, cool, I'll be right. I'm with Mikey again. Mikey's hanging out in the media room the whole time because he's dealing. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to hang out with him while he's dealing. This will be fine. No worries. And Marcos showed up. So Marcos was with us too. But we're back there, and she walks in with her two friends. I'm like, well, this is bad. In the media, it's like one of those, what do you call it? Like a stadium seating where it goes up, and we're at the very top. So I'm like, all right, well, this is bad because I can't get out now if I want to. Like I knew if I could get to the bottom, there was a sliding door there. But again, a bunch of influential. He just sold a bunch of dope to a whole bunch of different people. Nobody is going to want me to leave that party if I get busted here. But they sit right in front of us. They're whispering back and forth to each other. And I'm like, yeah, this just cannot be good. And eventually her friend reaches back to Mikey and starts whispering to Mikey. And Mikey, being the loyal friend that he is, goes, how the fuck would I know? Why aren't you just asking him? And so once again, Mikey saved my butt because she did recognize me and remember who I am. And keep in mind, she had no reason to, she didn't even know what career I was in. So she has no reason not to make contact. The officer I blame somewhat because you're supposed to know you don't make contact. He even, I guess, got a warning and was talked to later about what he did.
Yeah, totally.
Hers is just a freak of nature, but that was what the problem was. Is I'm playing in my own backyard. It's only a matter of time before things go wrong. But so I spent 2 years in that case, and the worst night of my life in that case. I've had several worse nights, but when things were progressing with the Greeks and Marcos was vouching for me. So yeah, he is who he says he is. We go out. He calls me up and says, "Hey, come get me." Roll up to his condo, pick him up, and he lives. I don't know if I said this, a high rise. It's like 20 some stories up, and he's pretty much at the top, or close to. So he jumps in the car. We go to this one club that's one of the Greek ones, and he was quiet the whole way to this club, right? Like, and this is a guy who's normally very, very talkative, very outgoing, very personable. He's not saying a word. He's on his phone a lot, and he's making sure I can't see it, which is unusual. So I had, all the spider senses saying, crap, this is going to be a bad night. We get to the club. Normally, we just sit wherever we want. The waitress there, or the hostess, we both know her. She says, I got your seats ready for you. Another big red flag. And she sits us down right in front of where they had their little office where they had all their security cameras. So I was like, well, this isn't a surprise, or this isn't by accident. We're there, 15, 20 minutes. Normally, again, Marcos is drinking nonstop. This time he's basically not drinking. Walks away several times to take phone calls. Very serious. And I'm like, there's something bad. All of a sudden he comes back and says, come on, we're going uptown to the club's at what's called the epicenter. So we get to the epicenter. It's 3 stories high. We get to the second landing on it, and we're walking. He says, hold on. He gets a phone call and he walks away again. And of course I'm sweating, and now's when you're starting to think, well, what should I do? Do I bail? Do I just take off now and leave? Or do I play it out? And he comes back and he says, come on, we're going back to my place. We got to talk. I was like, all right. So I go with him. And obviously, like I said, I spent way too many nights at his place already. Every door is always open. It's a 1-bedroom, but there's 2 bathrooms, a small, like a half bath and a regular bathroom. And then the living room. Like, you walk in, the kitchen is to the right. I think there was a closet, bedroom to the left, bathroom to the right, living room right in front of you, and just past that is the balcony. And we walk in, and number one, all the lights are off. Never once had I been in there where the lights were off. So I was, again, more amped up. And he goes, have a seat on the couch. I'm going to get us a bottle of wine. So I walk in. I walk right past the couch, and I just walk out to the balcony. Literally, the thought in my head is, I just want to see where I'm going to land. I thought for sure that I would get thrown off tonight, that this was it for me. And take a look. I did see that about halfway down there was a pool. And being the optimist person I am, I'm like, well, I can aim for the pool.
Yeah, you're like,
whatever happens, happens.
all right.
Go in. He brings a bottle of wine over and just starts grilling me, asking me all kinds of questions same questions over and over. It's probably a total no more than 20, 30 questions, asked in different ways. How much money do you have in your bank account? Where are these other clubs you have? Where are you from again? Bunch of stuff about my growing up, over and over. And then every once in a while he'd get up and he would do the criminal. Eric, you can relate to this. William, you probably understand this too. The criminal door open, where you just crack the bedroom door just enough to get your body through it so nobody can see in it. He kept, every time he'd go to the bedroom, that's what he would do. And then he'd come back a few minutes later. So I knew there were people in there. Reality, it was probably, most likely they probably had it tarped, and they weren't going to throw me off the building. They were probably just going to take me in the bedroom, and that would have been that. And that they just executed me in there because a lot easier to clean up. But he literally, this went on from right around 10 p.m. till it was daylight out the next day whenever I finally got to leave. So it was the entire night. And my leaving was literally him saying, all right, you can go now. I'll call you later. And that was it. Said nothing else. And of course, a couple times during it, I'd say, everything all right? What's going on? You know me. Everything. And he kept bringing up, I vouch for you. Your family to me, like over and over again. He would say that a lot too. And that if I'm lying, that it's not just me. He's gonna get killed for it, or his family's gonna get hurt. So that was that.
That's a lot.
Yeah. My whole goal in that case was to be able to introduce another undercover from the FBI that was not from Charlotte, that would be able to handle it. He was basically supposed to be my money man. It took way longer than it was supposed to, but eventually it did work. I got out of that case and was asked to see if I could infiltrate a domestic terrorist group that was possibly going to conduct a bombing at the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte. This was literally like a month after I got out of that one. So being smart and always making good decisions, I said, of course, let's do this.
Yep, sign me up.
Yeah. So again, I left my family. And keep in mind when I started the first case, I had a newborn, and now coming into this, he was going on 3, I guess. Jeez. And made my way. I ended up becoming someone I call Billy, his best friend, and he was a psychopath. The closest person I can compare him to in reality would probably be Ted Bundy, where Ted Bundy is always known for being very charismatic, a ladies' man, all that, to the T. And then when you get him alone, like he and I got very, very close, and he was insane. The first time I went to his bedroom at his farm, his walls had photographs and stuff that he drew of cops being everything from like stuff he drew, their head would be blown off. Like the photographs he had would be where Molotovs and stuff that cops were on fire, that kind of thing. He had a hatred for police like nothing I've ever seen in my entire life. He is the one, like I knew 100% if he found out I was a UC or a cop, I was dead. No question about it. Because his brain, he was very capable. And he was teaching me how to make bombs, giving me different instructions like that. Like this guy was insane. And he actually was teaching me how to shoot too, which I've apologized since then because I didn't tell my handler, the people who are in charge of you with the agency. That's basically the only contact you have is with your handler. And he was taking me shooting, and I wasn't telling about that because I knew I'd get pulled from the case because you can't be allowed to do that for rifle reasons. Like it was very stupid and very selfish, and it's not something I look back on with any kind of positivity. Let's put it that way. But I got arrested during the case, spent 12 hours in jail. Nobody knew I was being arrested. I had to get vouched for. So I got arrested for assaulting a police officer because there was a protest. I kicked the police officer and tried to break through a barricade and was arrested for that. It was planned between my handlers, the head of my agency, and the sheriff himself. Those are the only ones who knew about it because they had to clear my fingerprints for jail. Funny story with that real quick is they forgot to put my fingerprints back, and I went to the DEA task force after I left this case, and they run my fingerprints, and I came back as a terrorist.
Man.
I had to literally get a letter stating the whole case and ask them to fix it quickly because if I got killed or something and all they had were my fingerprints, I was screwed.
You were done, man. Yeah.
So Billy ended up introducing me to a few other people, and we got me a storage unit that was backstopped. And basically they were going to have supplies come down from another part of the country to bomb the DNC. And we were able to prevent it. And basically they chickened out because I was able to report everything to my handler. And so they just followed them everywhere they go, like blatantly followed them. So they're just like, oh, screw it. It's not even worth it. And so they decided not to bring the stuff down. So that went on for a year. I will say, hold on, we're going to do a little show and tell real quick. My handler, one of my handlers, this was my exiting. They went ahead and showed this to all the people and said, hey, we're looking for this guy. So I got phone calls from all my terrorist buddies telling me, hey, man, I think it's time for you to get back on your boat and get out of town. We love you. We'll miss you, but you need to sail on. It was the most beautiful exit you could ever possibly have. So I got out of that. I spent 2 more years in Charlotte with the DEA task force, HIDA, doing normal kind of UC stuff. After that, the mayor of Charlotte was arrested because of my first case. And he happened to be good friends with my chief. Against my wishes, my chief was told that it was my case. My life kind of went a little haywire then. My wife and I decided that maybe it'd be great to move to Florida. And that's what we did. Now, the part of that, when I finished the second case within 6 months, and then I went for my physical, and I was in decent physical shape looking wise anyway at that time. They took my blood pressure. It was 200 some over close to 120.
Oh.
which is catastrophic.
Yeah, man.
So they put me on blood pressure medication, and we're able to get it to like the 140s over low 100s, which is still not really good, but enough that I don't croak at the moment. I spent
way better.
Yeah.
Wow.
John, I have no comment on that, but I have a lot of comments on that. But went to Florida, was a deputy down here for 7 to 8 years. I worked one serial killer case that I'm proud of down here. Outside of that, I wonder if I should have been in law enforcement down here. I was definitely mentally on a very, very bad track. I wasn't sleeping at all. I spent 10 years getting maybe a half hour sleep a night. Finally, in 2022, my body gave out. I got a lung infection that, because I wasn't sleeping, I had no immune system, and I was staying in this high state of anxiety. Will, you talked about the fire extinguisher. I would get up and sleep under a window because I knew if they were doing a drive-by, they aim higher than that. So the safest place I could be is underneath that window. So that was my fire extinguisher, if you will.
That's the undercover dumpster fire right there. Yeah.
So my body shut down. Doctor said I needed to get used to not having lungs. It would take me about an hour to walk 400 meters, give you an idea of how bad it was. Spent weeks in the hospital, in and out, all that. Finally, March 2023, I just said, screw it. I did what I should have done a long, long time ago. Somebody had recommended a therapist to me. I saw them. They, what I call, triaged me to get me a little more stable and start learning how to sleep again and that kind of thing. That made all the difference in the world. I went from starting in August, I gained like 50 pounds getting into March, just because I'd eat and not move. So March came around, I was like, no, forget this. So once I was able to sleep, then I was able to start exercising, eating right, doing everything I should. And I've now lost a total of, what am I at now? Close to 80 pounds, I think. Yeah, exactly. I'm pulling, I just checked my body fat. I'm at 8% body fat right now.
Nice. Good
8
job,
to 10%. Like, I'm in better shape than I was when I was in the academy, we were balls to the wall.
That's wild.
Yeah. But that's what brought me to this is it literally gives me a knot to think about other people going through the same thing for so long when they can fix it early on and not. Because, Willie, you and I have talked about, I think personally, I've damaged my brain, I guess, in a sense, with PTSD because it's went changed so long. Yeah, exactly. And I'm with a therapist now. I just found a new therapist because I can only use that one for a little bit because she was actually retired. She was just helping me. But I found a new great one that is spectacular. And it's going to be, it's probably a lifelong process now for me, which is what it is. And I can deal with that. But obviously I'm making leaps and bounds moving forward. But I don't, when you get this close to it all being over for something so stupid in a sense, I don't want other people. I can't stand the thought of other people doing that. And I've done everything from the suicidal thoughts, going down the line, and especially and I've heard the comments from people. I'd never commit like the selfish, this and that. Like, my comment to anybody: don't ever judge someone who's or has lost a battle that way, or because. Let me tell you, your brain will do weird things. Like, that was my whole thing is, I've got a great family. But you can't see that. All you're thinking about is that you're hurting your family. Even like you're not, but your brain is telling that you're constantly hurting, that you're letting them down. Like, it just spirals on you so bad. That you just see things in a completely different light. And a lot of times you can't talk yourself. You need somebody else to get you through that.
Not today. You got to tell yourself, not today.
Yeah, and live on purpose. I think that's where we're going with all this stuff. We're going to get into the what to do about all of this. It's not just therapy. There's way more to this. Like, what do we do to help going forward? There's a whole nother, it's like a whole nother life to live.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you grow and you you have to get together with other people. That's what this podcast is about, bringing people together and just talking through, what happened and what helps, especially what helps. I love war stories, but I want to know what actually, when push comes to shove, what do you do when you're now, when you're faced with some of those reminders?
And I don't think it can be just one thing. You have to, it's like we don't do a search warrant with one tool, right? We bring everything at it. And we got to use same thing with your mental health. And thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. Exactly is what he said.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like, 'cause a lot of it is getting back to the present, to here and now, because you get stuck in the past, and that's just detrimental.
Yeah, totally. Well, look for some of that coming up, because I know you guys don't know this because we met earlier and you weren't on here because we're live on YouTube right now and Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff. But we had a meeting before this, and we have some stuff planned that's pretty cool to get everybody involved and just to kind of let this take shape, whatever it is, Matt.
Make it a community. Eric. It's got to be a community. Yep. Yeah. Be there for each other. Like John reaching out and saying all this. That's just it. Other people that are going through it or been through it, let's help each other out, man.
That's Rambo. Rambo, man.
Rambo. I got called Rambo. That's right.
Yeah. I just want to say this Tuesday, 13 years since I was in my shooting. And it's always a special moment because you go back and you're like, man, it was close, right?
Yeah.
And you dance with it, you process it, and then you try to move forward and try to find a good, and that's how we together talking about it. We get through this together, man. We'll help each other.
And I also think you should have a nice T-bone on that day as a celebration that you made it and survived it.
Well, it's Father's Day week too, man. So.
That's right. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, before I forget, we do need some people to help out with this podcast. This thing is actually a nonprofit organization. We haven't talked about that yet, but we do need some help. So if there are people that are feeling inspired or you have something you want to offer
or know somebody
let us get in touch with one of us. Send us an email or a DM or a message or something. Just let us know, because we're just picking up the pieces as we go, and you might be one of them, or you might know somebody that is. So don't be afraid to reach out and offer. If you want to join in or you want to help somehow, we got a lot of stuff going on that's really good, and I think it just adds to your momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Towards
All right, but I'm cutting you off now because we ran past time, and you know how I am about that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much. As always, we love y'all. Eric, Willie, love you both, man. Great job.
Yeah, you too.
And
all right.
Talk to y'all later.
Yep. Till next time.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
You too,
see you, Rambo. See you, everybody. Bye, Aaron.
Like a cool older brother. I'd never said that. That person needs to be banned from now on. Aaron Slade, that's a friend of mine.
We'll end it.